Okay, I think we're ready to start if you are.
Yes, I am ready to start. Sorry, I can't be there today. I have to babysit a computer that's compressing large video files today.
Sounds exciting.
Yes, it is very exciting. So you ready to call it to order?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, let's call this meeting to order. And I guess someone has to vote me in remotely.
I think we're gonna skip that step now because we only have one other trustee in the room. So since there's no business being conducted, we're just discussing and then making a recommendation to the board. I think we'll just proceed.
Awesome.
Okay. Okay, you want to start with the agenda?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you all for joining. This is most of the members of the strategic plan committee that put together the current 5-year plan that JMRL is operating under. We're also welcoming today Maggie Bond and Jeremy Lundgren, who have recently started at JMRL as our adult reference and adult services coordinator, manager. Thank you, and collections and technology manager. So both of their names are all over the strategic implementation plan. They're here to find out what they're supposed to be doing for the next 4 years. The library board is scheduled annually to have a review of the strategic plan, and generally it is at the April meeting. So what we're doing is performing that review and then summarizing it for the board for their next meeting later this month. Okay? So I shared with you all a document in which we pulled out the objectives that were either ongoing or due. And there's copies here in the room, and I will share the screen. So just as a reminder of what our garish color scheme says here, what's in red are the board level goals that sets the direction for JMRL. And if you recall, the actual plan itself is a 2-page document that is a very broad here is what the board wants to see accomplished over the next 5 years at JMRL, and it lists the goals and specific strategies. What we're mostly talking about today are the items in the staff implementation plan. So what's in red there are the board level goals, and what's in dark blue are the board level strategies. Both of those are in the actual plan. And then what's in purple is the objective, which should be the measurable target that staff is working on to be able to show the board, here we've accomplished these things on your behalf. And what's in green are the key performance indicators, which is timeline, the desired outcome, and who's responsible for this. Does all that sound familiar? Yeah, okay, great. We're all on the same page. So Meredith, I thought we would just go through the ones that are kind of timely now and discuss them and review progress and talk about any changes that need to happen.
That
That
sounds
sound
good.
okay? Okay, great. So under the we serve our community, these are values which go with the board's missions and values. We serve our community is one of the values. The goal here is we'll work with the community to serve everyone and provide library services and meet people where they are. JMRL will hire, train, and retain exceptional staff to foster a customer-focused environment. Okay? The strategy here was to identify underserved populations and work to bring library services to them by networking with community organizations and the groups they serve. So specifically, the objectives that we have here as annually or with a time on them are school and homeschool partnerships, increasing card holdership and access to digital resources. So this is the timeline is we're working on this every year, basically. We want juvenile cards to be on the rise, and the responsible parties are Children's Services Manager and Children's Committee, which is comprised of all the staff at JMRL that provide youth services, basically. So this is an annual objective. I did not bring data, which I should, on where we are compared to last year. I'll look that up for the board. I do know that we had the busiest summer reading in our data keeping history last summer. It was 100% more participation than the year before. Largely that was tweaks that Children's and Young Adult Services made to the program itself. And a lot of it driven by the fact that it was kind of front loaded. You come in and you get a bag the first time you sign up, and then there are incentives throughout the summer to keep participating. So subjectively, a highly successful summer, which is the driving force behind JMRL's youth services. I don't have numbers with me, but any questions or thoughts on that?
I noticed we also mentioned digital circulation. We can't measure digital circulation to juvenile accounts, but we can measure the digital circulation in Overdrive of juvenile materials.
Oh, that would be
And I
great.
can get you those numbers.
Okay, great. Great. Okay, the next purple one, Latasha, that's an objective, right? It's been a while. You were the one to keep me on track always about which was which. It's an objective.
Yes, purple's objectives.
Make partnership opportunities more visible and shareable. The timeline here was by the end of fiscal year 25, and I just made a note for myself here on the side that I can't read that says, achieved, but I think we could consider making this an annual green one as well. Green is KPI. Because I think that there's always room for improvement there. When I say achieved, it's because we published the partnership form online for folks. There's going to be more information here, I think, today about the outreach committee and the work that they're doing, but there's definitely a push to make sure that the public is aware of the opportunities that they have to interact with the library and request specific services. So any objections to kind of making that another ongoing? What could go wrong if we edit on the fly, right? Oh, that could go wrong. We need a new color for it as well.
Do red down there. Do a different red.
Orange.
I don't know, it'll be hard to read.
All of them are going to be hard to read.
Brown. Okay. What about brown? Brown's one of our colors. Brown.
There you go. All right, the next strategy was to identify organizations providing services aligned with JMRL's mission in the region, regularly check to make sure there are no duplication of efforts, and look for opportunities to partner when purposes are aligned. This has been an ongoing goal, and the desired outcome is increased program participation. So being more impactful with what we're offering by not duplicating services that other folks are offering, or if they are, supplementing what they're doing with library services, keeping our mission and values in mind.
What could be an example of an organization created by all?
Kristen's got a thought.
Parks and Rec, for instance, a lot of times, not just Charlottesville Parks and Rec, but it might be one of the outlying areas, Parks and Rec.
We, the Nelson County branch manager and I have been talking about, like, there's a Parks and Rec facility right across the parking lot there that was having some children's event at one time, and they were having one at a similar time. So they're going to try to work on having it like a back-to-back thing where, like, if you had a toddler and a school-age kid, you could kind of swap them between the two and just offer opportunities to work together to capture the same families.
Another one would be the Discovery Museum, making sure we're not offering the main programs at the same time, that they're, it comes up a lot in Charlottesville. A week or two ago went down to TJ Ace at ICS, which is the adult community ed, works with a lot of the immigrant population, refugee population for language learning. And we talked to them about what the library can offer, visiting their classes, making sure that they're aware of what the library can offer.
I think part of the conversations, Pearl, as I remember it, was, making sure, one of the goals was to make sure that the programming that JMRL offers is meeting JMRL's mission. We're here to provide library service, so we don't want to expand too much so that we're doing something that's really the purview of this other, entity. Like, we don't want to be giving flu shots out, because that's not our purview. If we were to partner with that organization, it would be to provide health literacy information. That would be our mission and value. So just figuring out how to not reinvent the wheel with other organizations that are already doing some of the work that. Okay, the next strategy was to review and revise JMRL's approach to its compensation plan. So a lot to unpack here. The purple was the the objective, thank you, is to develop a new pay scale for JMRL staff by the end of fiscal year 25. So the board members in the meeting here are well aware of the progress that stalled there, where JMRL went through a salary study that was commissioned by the city of Charlottesville that we were a part of, JMRL was a part of. The data that came back was deemed unacceptable by the city of Charlottesville, basically. We went back out and did our own, not unacceptable, I shouldn't say that. They had some concerns about the data, and in looking at it, so did I. Some of the positions were mislabeled, but it did give a very broad strokes picture of how far behind JMRL was with kind of the market median there, and it was generally 20% or more behind in most locations, most positions. So we went back out and performed our own salary study with peer libraries throughout the state, which showed not quite as bad data, but still pretty dramatic. Then worked with the city of Charlottesville to come up with a new pay plan that would match their new graded and stepped pay plan, which went into effect 2 years ago. That project stalled out. They had turnover in their HR department. They had 2 new HR heads since then. What the board ended up doing over the last 2 years was to instead take our existing pay scale and brute force pull it up by 5% each year for a total of a 10% increase over the last 2 years if budgeting goes through for July of 26 here, which it looks like it will. So the strategy changed quite a bit here from where, let's see if there's another one related to it. So the desired outcome was to bring JMRL's pay plan in line with the city of Charlottesville's, and in the end, the library board and myself determined that that was not going to happen in a time frame that was going to meet our staff's needs. So I would suggest some rewriting of this goal here, and I also don't think I mentioned a 10% increase in the past 2 years, but I mentioned a 20% dearth before that. So this is not something that was done or will be done. So let's get our brown ink out. And at least for the life of this plan, I would think that this is an annual, set of objectives, strategies, KPIs that needs to be looked at. And it is being looked at by the board. The board is well aware. It's a problem. I don't want to speak for the library board though, Tony or
That's
Mary.
fine. Makes sense.
This one. So I would suggest changing this to
5 if you want a shortcut key.
No, I can't. My brain can't comprehend that. Thank you, though. Alt, Shift 5. Thank you. So instead, I think the language that we want, instead of bringing it in line with the city of Charlottesville's pay plan, so this was about like how we were approaching it. I think more importantly, the goal or the KPI should be about trying to align it with what we determine to be the market, the market. Yeah. So something along the lines of. It leaves it broad enough that, the board has some options on how to determine what that is, but acknowledges that it's not currently in line with the market. Thoughts on that language? Budget committee's been talking about this. We'll continue to talk about it. Staff's comp committee has started major discussions here as well. Okay, the next value is we provide free, equitable, open access to information, and the goal there is JMRL will facilitate discovery and delivery of a wide range of materials in a variety of formats. The library will adopt new technologies to meet the changing needs of the community. And the first strategy there was ensure that all resources provided to the community reflect its diversity and support its freedom to read. The first objective there with a KPI that's due was update JMRL's collection management plan, set frequency for regular review. Timeline by the end of fiscal year 25. Accomplished.
Yes, the revised collection management plan was presented to the board last summer.
Yeah.
We haven't set a frequency for regular review. I would say we're continually reviewing it because it is, we've just come up with something that we want to add to it. It's meant to be a living document. And so annual review, I could set that frequency right now.
Okay. Is this worth resetting the objectives to just say annually review JMRLs?
But sure, yeah. The desired outcome remains the same. Ensure it's always aligned with the needs. So, yeah. We're gonna just change all these timelines to annually.
No, I mean, I think, right, that's a fair.
I do it. It's just an observation.
I think especially once we get some systems in place like this, then it is important to have an
Absolutely.
annual review.
Yeah.
I know. I'll shift 5. I'll shift 5. Refine existing platform to share reconsideration data with staff, increasing staff training and awareness by the end of fiscal year 26, which means the end of this June. So Meredith, you want to talk about progress there?
Sure. The Intellectual Freedom Working Group was convened to update the procedure for requests for reconsideration. And at that time, we developed a page on the intranet that has resources for staff for navigating that procedure. It has the last 3 years of reconsideration data for staff to review. So I'd say, yes, it's in place. We have increased staff training through continual conversations.
Yeah, I would say there's kind of 2 parts to this. It's like making the data available, which is done. Like any staff has access to, or the trustees have access to information about requests for reconsideration that JMRL's got, along with the results of those. Staff training and awareness. Staff training has been increased, right? There's more your team going out to talk to branch staff about these things. Awareness is kind of hard to define, right? Whether or not all staff are engaging with those tools or are aware that those tools are out there.
It is part of the orientation for all new staff, the collection management training. We have a section on that. So as long as new staff are signed up for that training, they get at least an introduction to it. Agreed, we could more frequently put it in their faces.
Okay.
Which is another way of saying
Awareness.
Keep it to the forefront of.
I would say the broad strokes, I think the goals that this group and the board discussed are met here, which was like making sure that the data is available. There was concern about, there's an increase in requests across the country. Like, how is that impacting JMRL, and how do we make sure our staff know about it? And I feel like that is met.
Yes, I agree.
So do we have an achieved? Okay, the next strategy is promote awareness and discoverability of library resources, adapting to meet patrons' information-seeking behavior. And the objective is to continue to improve JMRL's website and catalog experience. This is an annual goal. Increased usage of JMRL's digital resources. The responsible parties are Jeremy and JMRL's digital services coordinator. This is something that the technology committee, the board staff technology committee has been talking about as well, and we'll be presenting to the board in May help me with my words here, Jeremy.
Continuing education.
Not necessarily a continuing education. It's part of the review of the director's annual goals, but there is a time frame for the elements of the website and when they are scheduled to be reviewed based on either contract needs or the needs of our community, basically. So I think this is a solid objective as is, and the time frame is still I mean, the time frame is all constantly being looked at. Although I'm sure this will come up when the board is discussing this.
What analytics do we use for that increased usage outcome?
It depends on what we mean by digital resources. You know, we
Yeah.
keep vague track of like website hits,
Yeah.
you know, but I think it's an overall picture of database usage, of even our digital collection, you know, like we could put that in there too. And we know if we use that as a metric for how well we're doing on our website, then it's
Right.
fair, it's cheating because it's 30% of our collection, double digits every year. So
Yeah.
I don't consider that to be the only factor. And I don't think that was the intention of the. Okay, provide JMRL staff with the resources needed to deliver adaptable and flexible library services to the community. Continue to explore fine-free options for JMRL by the end of fiscal year 26. Desired outcome to remove potential barriers to access, responsible parties, myself and the library board. So this will be achieved on July 1 of this year, where JMRL will be a fine-free library. It's not quite achieved. We can't write that in here yet, but it will be.
Yeah.
There's a plan. Well, were you aware of that?
That's great. I mean, I love the automatic renewal
Yeah.
and all that, but yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were one of the concern, you know, the twofold concerns that the library board went into great depth. They had a working group that did a lot of hard work on this, and the two main concerns were kind of loss of some revenue for the library system and also lack of access to materials, you know, whether it's going to take longer. So we've got a bunch of data that we've been collecting this year, but the automatic renewals cut way into the revenue already. We were looking at it the other day, and like it really cut down all those quarters every day for over things that were eligible for renewal. So
It's a good thing to bring that up though, because that's a step in this goal, this.
Yeah.
Objective, was that removing that barrier.
Yeah.
And so it's a step towards.
yeah, I think that was the
Great.
board's intention all along, was that to first do the automatic renewals and then kind of ease our way into this fine-free library. So, but when the JMRL goes to the Friends Endowment this year, there will be some conversation about how to help make sure that there's enough funding to replace all the tables and computers that Fines and Fees used to take care of. Good thing we have such a successful book sale. Okay, share relevant information with all library employees regularly via staff newsletter. So this is a very inside baseball thing, but JMRL had a staff newsletter for many, many years. It died a COVID death and never came back. It came back. That's not true. It came back for a while. Like
Yeah, Jennifer did it for a while.
Jennifer did one for a while, and we've been through a few different PR resources.
There's been turnover in that position. I will say a nice model for it is what Scott's been doing with tech services. So I wouldn't give Dylan necessarily the credit for that or myself, but it's a really nice model for what a staff newsletter would look. This is a department one.
So what they have done, and the focus, my focus for the PR specialist has been on patron-facing newsletters first, and we finally got all those out. We had one regional one, and now we have one for each branch as well. So you can get information about if you're going to the Scottsville Library, you can get a monthly newsletter about that and about what's going on at JMRL. But part of that was identifying the platform to use for that, and that has worked okay. But that's what one of our departments is using to share information with all staff about what's happening in technical services. So I think it's a pretty easy transition there. But I would say it's not realistic that this will be done in the next 2 months. So I would suggest incrementing that year to 27. Any thoughts or objections to that?
I think that sounds good.
You're in. Instead of this.
Ah. Thank you. So what was that, 26?
Yeah.
Is that the correct one? Thank you. Refresh the JMRL staff intranet. Again, these are all like inside baseball. They're organizational communication things that are important. So this is also done as the digital services coordinator and the collection and technology manager, largely done before last summer even. Like the new internet has been up for a while. There's constant revision that happens on it and constant improvements, but the overall also available for the library board. So consider that to be achieved. Foster, promote, and develop employees, increasing training and cross-training opportunities, building capacity and competency. So this is a very big umbrella here. And the board has heard about our JMRL's cross-training program, which is now in year 3. It's been very, I think, highly successful. It gives staff an opportunity. In year 1, every staff member has to cross-train at circulation. Do you guys know that in year 1?
I've already done.
Yes, I
Okay.
haven't done it.
Okay. All right.
Good enough.
Maggie done, Jeremy still to do. And then in year 2, a lot of other options become available for them to travel to different branches, go to different departments, including the Friends of the Library. Peter Mano has offered several cross trainings where library staff have come and gotten just an overview of how the volunteer system works with the Friends. Desired outcomes are staff retention, internal promotions, patron satisfaction with library services. I think we're moving in all the right directions here. This is a hard one to kind of pinpoint very specific things as well. And we could tweak that, or we could leave well enough alone there. Input, thoughts, feedback? The goal wasn't specifically about, or I'm sorry, the objective wasn't specifically about cross-training, but that's the most prominent example of how that's working. There's constant work to update the training program as well. I'm looking at Meredith because she wrote most of the training programs. Okay, let's breeze through. Retaining. Ensure JMRL staff are equipped, enabled, and empowered to provide the best library service and grow in their roles by bolstering employee safety, collaboration, and mentorship opportunities, and improving interstaff communication. So again, a very broad umbrella there, some of which the things that we've already talked about are addressing those, like the need for a staff newsletter and also the cross-training that's there. I think one key one that came out of our talks with staff and the survey that we did during the creation of this plan and the implementation plan was about bolstering employee safety. And some of that is physical building things like security, cameras, things like that, and try to tweak where we can. Some of it is training that's available. So this is an ongoing objective, especially when we get opportunities like in the renovation of the central library, there will be opportunities to revisit needs there.
Was the employee safety, was that specific by branches? Were there different concerns or were they?
There are different concerns at different branches about employee safety, but I think it's a fairly widely held concern, especially so, working at the Central Library in downtown Charlottesville, which is, as close to an urban library as we get. We've got a lot of people coming in and out. There are safety concerns. But then if you're at the Scottsville Library and it's like 8 o'clock at night and you're kind of in a sleepy place with no one else around and there's some sort of emergency, there are different concerns there, but still concerns.
I think that, and I don't have numbers on who fills out the feedback forms, but
Yeah.
we've done a good job with the promotion of the availability of the feedback forms, both staff entered patron feedback and staff feedback.
Yes.
I feel like more staff are aware that they have that avenue
Yes.
for giving feedback.
Yes. Some of that is directly related to safety concerns. A lot of it is not, but there's still a healthy usage for staff.
Yeah, just all of feeling empowered and yeah.
That's a good point. Thank you. Okay, strategy to provide equitable access and training for existing and emerging technologies. All right. Offer regular tutorials or info sessions at branches on emerging technology, as well as refreshers on existing tech for the public by the end of fiscal year 26, which is again the end of June this year. So Maggie and I were talking about this one specifically before the committee meeting started, because a lot of that, the tutorial work or info sessions would come out of the reference department at the central library. And of course, we went for a year with no one in charge of that department. So I would think we would increment this a little bit, give some time. We are offering at JMRL regular tech tutorials. Northside is offering a very robust service that gets asked about every day. There are resources at the central library as well. Not every staff at every branch has the capacity to offer these on a regular basis. You know, like I said, if you're the two people running the desk at the Nelson Library, you don't necessarily have time to do an hour tutorial. But what we can do is provide, like, here's what it would look like, and here's the plan for it for all staff. Providing more staff for it would mean like scheduling somebody to come from reference, and potentially something that could happen, but it just requires more
time.
So does 27 seem reasonable? That's 1 year.
Well, I don't know. Are we keeping stats? We have them in the monthly report reference, right? Tutorials.
That's on tech tutorials, yes.
So between the lab, the reference department, and then, getting numbers from other branches.
We aren't keeping stats on, I know we say something about it's not always possible on a walk-in basis, but the amount of in the moment teaching that we offer and like the as needs come up for walk-in patrons is pretty astounding. So that we're doing great.
Yeah.
But we can have a bigger plan.
Yeah.
In our regular, so our April and October reference stats, I wonder if it would be worth breaking out what kind of, if it's a tech or info session, just making that note. That would be one way to check it. That's not too far beyond what we're already doing.
Yeah, I think that's worth revisiting for October.
And I wonder if we could add to the monthly reports.
Okay.
We have internet signups, reference transactions, but we have we do more tech tutorials than we do teacher packs.
Yeah, we do less and less of that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's a category, but we need to discuss it with the branch managers about how they're gonna, at Central, it's a couple of different departments. At Northside, possibly tracking it, but at most branches, it's gonna be, the branch manager's gonna know. They just have to get used to
At
it.
Northside, I think they're all by appointment only. My understanding is that they mostly go through, although there's still some of that in the moment.
There is, certainly if it's something where they're really gonna have to dedicate some time to someone, they schedule it, but even at the CERT desk, yeah, we'll have people come up and ask us, questions like, how do we do this? How do we access? And if we can, we do it, or we'll send them over to the reference desk.
Are folks of yours like Libby or like access to library services questions, or are they more general, like, I don't know how to use this?
I would say more frequently it's like doing something in Libby or something with the website. I mean, we do occasionally get the phone ones, but I do feel like it has more to do with library services than it's just a general, how do I use my laptop?
So I think we identified this objective, when this plan went into place, and I still think we need some work on it. So we need some more time. Got all the right people in the right places now to get that happening. Increase patron access to JMRL's Makerspace and digital media labs, including adding needed services and equipment annually. So that is an annual request there. Increase patron familiarity with new technologies and access to maker technologies. So currently we have 3 maker spaces at JMRL. There's the one in the lab at the Central Library. There's a teen one here at the Northside Library, and there's the business center / maker lab at the Nelson Memorial Library.
Again, we don't really keep stats for each location.
Each location is keeping their own stats. Like you get a report from the lab on what's being used there.
They're keeping
I get a
track.
report
Yeah,
from Nelson on what's being used there. I'm not sure about the teen one here.
and it's limited to teens, so.
Not sure how much it really gets.
Yeah, there's gonna be a change in focus here, is my understanding.
I think, yes, with us having had that position, the teen librarian position empty for
Turned
a
over,
while, and even she was transitioning stuff when she was here from what Nita was doing, that it's kind of flux stuff down.
Yeah, I think they're working on like a video gaming space as part of this going forward. Yeah.
But I can say it's used more than it was 2 years ago.
Oh, certainly.
You know,
Yeah,
we do have like people using the sewing machines, people using the Glowforge, people using the Crickets, people doing the VHS conversions. Those are a lot. Those are used a lot.
I think what we haven't done is added new equipment to any of the three until Jess's request for stuff for next year. Stuff in the teen area at Northside, but we haven't added. Oh, wait, that's not true because Fred has added some new things. They've had some donated things. They got some of the book press
Right.
things from the center from the
Book Arts Press.
book arts
Yeah.
folks. I know they got some sewing equipment too. The book press things were, I think, the only new kind of service that was added there. We didn't buy any, new
Home.
equipment
Yeah.
I'm not aware of. So that's something to review, I think. Okay. All right. This is I probably came up with this one. Increase patron awareness and access to hybrid meeting room technology through improved documentation and staff training by the end of fiscal year 26. So we're sitting in this meeting room at the Northside Library now. We're using the equipment that is available for the public to use. It's not the most intuitive equipment sometimes, but this is better than most of our setups. You need a laptop, you need a couple cords to plug into the wall, and you need to know how to turn these things on. At some of our branches, all we have is a portable unit that it works well, but it is even more like this needs to plug into that, that needs to plug into that, that needs to plug into that. So JMRL started getting this equipment during COVID, largely for the board to make sure that the library board could have virtual meetings, and started adding things that in theory are there for the public as well. I know at the central library, there's a lot of use of that equipment, and now people have to ask in advance to be trained on using it in the Swanson room or the Madison room, I
So we
believe.
worry about double bookings for the
Yeah,
equipment.
exactly, and there's equipment that's needed. So I think that's going pretty well, but my impression is that the public is largely not aware that these are available and that not all of our staff is comfortable sharing how to use this equipment with members of the public when it's not necessarily intuitive for them to use in the first place. So I know I know we have staff that have worked hard on documentation for staff, including pictures and things like that, but I think there's room for improvement here. So I'm not willing to say, well, this is done. I'm sure there are increased checkouts of hybrid meeting room equipment. To your point, it's being
Anecdotally, there are groups that come every Wednesday night and use it, like, because that's the night I'm there and they use it every
They
Wednesday.
use the Swanson room regularly that got trained once and knows how to do it.
Once they know how to use it,
Maybe this is just an impression on my part, but my feeling is the vast majority of the people who use the meeting room spaces as
Don't.
public meetings are not aware, don't know either that it's available or don't know how to use it. So I'd like to see.
Or they might see that it's there and that people use it, but they're not confident that they have a use for it or need to use it. They're like, oh, that's nice, but not, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want a scenario where it's like, well, it depends on which staff member is working that day as the weather. Where it's like, oh, well, Johnny's not here and he's the only one who knows how to use this stuff. Like it should be part of what we're offering. And I don't think we're there yet.
I will also say sometimes things change in the rooms without the staff knowing it. And then that makes it harder for the staff to troubleshoot because people mess with things because they're people.
And also,
It's not the same in every room.
Also, there's an expectation in the world these days that things are just like flip and it's ready to go. You just throw your phone at it and you can pay with your credit card, and you see the book online, you press the button and it's there. So the ease of use that the public expects is probably higher than we can provide, because that's very expensive to get to that level of, yep, you just And the people that are bringing equipment in to use with our stuff, like they don't have the state of the art things. They're bringing in their 10-year-old computer, which may not be compatible. So, there are definitely some hurdles here that are beyond what our staff can control.
Meredith can speak to this with the UVA program. Like sometimes we've had problems, like this past Sunday it worked fine.
Meredith Cole.
Yeah, that's what I mean, Meredith Cole, sorry. But then sometimes we've had to use my laptop because the laptop that they brought in for whatever reason wasn't working. So it's, it varies so much, right, Meredith?
Yes, and I think I've diagnosed the problem. She kept plugging and unplugging it, and I think it caused a lot of confusion in the system.
That does happen.
There's a delay.
Yeah, and then it was just like it took a while to get it to go back on again.
There are a lot of variables that we can't control. Yes, like the human element of wanting to fix something by plugging and unplugging it. I do think that we could like feel more confident as a staff with better documentation and training. And I think that we could ease the use as much as possible with more clear signage and simple instructions and troubleshooting links or contacts.
Okay.
Uniformity too across the whole system, to me, is one of the most important things. If you can't afford to make it as simple as possible with the best possible technology, then one thing we can do is make it all the same everywhere so that the user experience never changes, and that will help with people's ease and comfortability coming in to use things.
Yeah.
Agree with both of those, yeah, and that's not our current scenario. Like the only places that have this setup, I forget what it's called, but the Hudley camera mounted on the side are here, the Madison room at Central. There's only like 3 or 4 places at JMRL that have the cameras already here. Every other place has you need to go check out the camera, which is in a big, looks like a base that you carry around, like a base
Case, guitar
Yeah.
case.
All right. Okay, so I think we're all on the same page that there's still work to be done here. I think that the language is fine in terms of the goal and the strategy and the objectives, and I think that it's not going to be done in the next 2 months. Does this seem reasonable? So this is a kind of it says JMRL's managers, but really there's like a technology component here, and then there's a kind of like staff capacity and working with the training committee. So I'm looking at you, Maggie, but it's not just you, it's the training committee.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable for a year?
Yeah, but there's also a money aspect if you're trying to make things uniform. Cost money.
Yes, it does.
A year will give us time to figure out what our short-term and our long-term solutions are, though.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like a year might be too short, just with Jeremy coming in and getting settled in a lot of stuff, and then that role has been vacant, so there's not been the time to work on it quite as much during that. Should be pushed out.
Well, and I also feel like the equipment changes, like,
Yeah,
when something breaks, you
yeah.
have to fix it, right? So you have to get something.
Yeah, and
And you're not necessarily getting something
Right.
because it's constantly changing. So to have the same thing is just almost impossible.
yes, we're
Yeah.
dealing with that now with room technology and also things like security cameras all over the place. So it may be something that we have to pick a budget year and say, this year, we're going to do that project everywhere, and
Then everybody's on the same
Exactly.
timeline.
Yeah.
There are other complicating factors too. Like JMRL doesn't own any of these facilities, and for some of the jurisdictions, some of this technology is built into the buildings themselves, especially when it comes to security cameras. Like here at the Northside Library, the security camera system is owned and operated by Albemarle County. JMRL we work with the county on this, but we don't own it per se. So when the new central library comes online, we have architects coming next year to talk about it. I'm sure they're going to talk about the newest and brightest and coolest
At that time.
AVs at that time, right?
And then 2 years later.
But then if that happens and there's funding there for that, well, then that's different from what's at every other branch. So, I hear you, Jeremy. It's going to be a moving target, I think, for some time. I don't want to tell the
This is
public.
a
we're not
better discussion for the technology committee.
gonna-
We're also
I think we need to have 2 more Two more things to get through, right?
Yeah.
So we're bleeding into the next bullet with just this overall review of all of the technology, and it's blossoming into that. Going back to this one we're on is what we can do in the next year is increase staff training and really work on whatever we have existing, making sure that our staff is aware of it and knows how to use it.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Natasha, you okay with that?
Yeah, because I think with that being the focus that, yes, there's things that we can do. Doesn't require a huge overhaul.
Same, this next one is also it's an internal goal. You know, it's about annual review of technology services offered and things to come at JMRL for all staff, potentially at all staff training day. So that has not happened. And this would have to be moved forward as well.
We need to remember that at our next
Yeah.
all staff training day agenda meeting.
We're planning now for the fall's training day, and you know, this is not the board, this is the staff implementation plan, but this is what we've said we're gonna do to meet the board's objectives, so.
Session.
We did have, we have had technology related sessions.
Sure.
Yeah, AI, yeah.
But something targeted would be good.
Okay, so the next strategy here's that we inspire lifelong learning, promote learning at every stage of life, both at the library and in the community, offer a diverse range of programs, resources, and services aimed at creating a culture of inclusion, review programs, resources, and services as community needs change, including service hours, schedules, community collaborations, outreach, and branch locations. So this is more about like what is the library doing in terms of the facilities, and I think this might tie into a later one as well. So this would be like, do we need more hours? Do we need a new building? And then any other things that come with that. Something that we're doing constantly and annually. I can't remember now if there's mention of bookmobile services down the line here. Yeah, there's some, so I won't jump the gun too much. I'm fine with this as it is. Update JMRL style manual, including adding branding templates for staff to use by the end of fiscal year 25. Streamline guidelines for staff on creating branded materials. So this is done. Dylan has updated the style manual. I think there's an overall discussion about that the board is interested in about an overall look at branding at JMRL. You know, whether or not it's time to revamp everything, but the style manual has been updated for changes that have happened within the current guidelines there. So I think we can do achieved here. Okay, expand outreach services within a coordinated regional framework, create a JMRL outreach committee, provide staff with tools to expand the footprint of their branch department, provide patrons with a consistent experience at outreach events. This is led by our bookmobile and outreach services manager. We did have a turnover in that position, but the committee has met more frequently since the turnover happened. So I'm very pleased. There was a lot of discussion about that this morning at the JMRL managers meeting about making sure, like some examples are making sure that every branch has a go kit for outreach. So if you get a last second, like, oh, hey, can you come to this school event? It's all ready to go. You pick it up and go, and you've got your tablecloth and your, you know, all the stuff needed to provide services out there. So good job, team. Develop training and a standardized approach to outreach services, which may include standard materials at each branch for producing offsite events and services. That's what I just said. Got ahead of myself there. So it will be achieved by the end of this year. It's an ongoing project right now. We cultivate a welcoming environment for community engagement. JMRL will work with stakeholders to provide modern, accessible, and secure spaces. Educate stakeholders about the funding structures and operational needs of JMRL. Produce a graphic representation of JMRL's funding sources ready to hand out to stakeholders. This is done. This is that, what's it called? Sankey chart that the board developed. which is intuitive to some folks and not intuitive to others, but it's a flow in, flow out of all the funding at JMRL. I love it. It took me a while to get used to it.
Where is that available?
It's available in my drive currently. I can't remember where it's linked. Yeah,
Sankey?
board handouts, SANKEY. We can ask Sarah to link it. It does need to be updated every year. So the current version of it is the fiscal year 26 version, and it will need to be updated to the fiscal year 27 version. I think it would belong, Meredith, along with the other board information. Like we have, the audit will go there and the board said. So I think that's a good story. I don't think it's currently linked there. But it will be by the end of the week.
Let me have this meeting.
This is achieved. Oops. Provide training and internal education to staff about JMRL's funding structures to better prepare them to discuss this with stakeholders. Staff capacity for directing stakeholders to appropriate funding sources. So I don't know that, the closest thing we get to that is the state of the library address that happens annually. And I don't know that it's been specifically targeted at this, annually during our all staff training day. Staff has to hear me talk for a long time about the current state of the library, and that would be the place to go.
So we should add that too.
Yeah, if you put a link to that, you can show it and add that into your.
Also training day, yeah.
So I think that is a very achievable goal. It just has not been done yet.
Well, I think we could do better. I don't know. Like when you go to all the branches, are the endowment brochures and the friends brochures and all the different ways you can give money out and available, and do all the staff know about that?
Usually the Friends brochures are like join the Friends. Most branches have those pretty
But
prominently.
the others we're not so sure about.
That one probably needs to be reviewed and looked at. It probably needs to be updated.
Yeah, like ways to give money. We need to work on that as we're going fine free.
We brought that up at the customer service committee meeting last month. Previous organizations I worked at, including museums, but libraries even had like little donation containers or information about doing that. And if we could get more visible things out with us going fine free to encourage them.
Yeah, we don't want to collect money, but like making these like here's how you can.
Here's how you can help. So in the Bible forms,
That is part of again that orientation to collections is how to get money for books. And I touch with staff on the funding for the collection, but not the bigger picture. Yeah.
And I think it will be helpful for all staff to see that Sankey chart just to understand like, okay, here's what the Friends provide, and here's what the state provides, and here's what federal funding provides, and here's what the local jurisdiction. It's a complicated setup. Okay, develop standardized orientation materials to distribute to newly elected local officials. This says the library board was going to do this. Is that finished? Yeah. Okay. So I don't think that's done for this year, and it just needs to be on the library board's radar. And I'm joking because really it says library director and library board. But I think
that you try to meet with newly.
Yeah, we try to meet with newly elected officials, but this is something different. I think like having something like to give over to explain like here's how JMRL works.
It's fun.
Yeah, here's how the funding works. And we do that budget season, we hand them all a copy of our budget, which does a fairly good job of explaining, but it's also a 25-page document, like something more concise, I think. That was the last one that had an immediate, either annual or 25 or 26 deadline. So Meredith Cole, I think at the board meeting a week from Monday, there's going to be an agenda item for a report from this committee. And I guess my goal would be not to go through this process again at the board meeting, which is one of the reasons that this meeting got called, is that this body would review it. And it would instead be to say, I could put the changes that we made here into the handouts for the board. And it would basically say, like, we reviewed the timely, and take a look here. This is what's going to change in the implementation plan. And then any discussion to ensue, I think, will ensue.
Right, and just a report that you guys are on track and a couple of things need more time because of staffing additions, and changeovers, but I think it looks good.
One thing that came out of the board self-assessment last month or the month before was that the state's metrics for assessment of the board included does the board annually review the mission statement of the library? And there was a discussion about whether or not we really want to annually change the mission of the library. And I think what was decided was that we would just put that up in front of the board annually. And I think it's a good time, maybe it'll be a separate agenda item, but it's a good time while we're talking about the strategic plan to also put that up and remind the board, here is your mission and values, and make sure that everybody understands what they are. If there was a dramatic need to change them, then there could be a discussion, but it's in pretty good shape. Does that sound
Review
good?
does not mean- Yeah, review does not mean change.
Yes, review does not mean change. Okay, well, I'll talk to Alita about getting both those things on the agenda for the meeting.
That sounds perfect.
Any other hopes, dreams, aspirations? Plans, objectives, goals? Yeah. Okay, well, it's hard to sometimes on the day-to-day for the staff that are involved here, it's hard to, like, remember that this is what we're doing and why we're doing it long-term. So it's good to get together and talk through it with the board members and with our friends. But also, as Meredith said, the ship is pointed in the right direction, and great things are happening, and all we can do is make it.
I deputize Krista to gavel us out.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Meredith.
Guys. Have a great day. Take care.
Yeah.
Well,